Wow, here we are again, folks. Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. What would be the nicest thing that a person could say to an author? And that would be, I read your book. What would be the nicest thing that a person could say to God? Would be the same. I read your book. And even better than that, I put the principles in action and you blessed me for it. And I thank you. When we get to heaven, we could thank God. We could say, God, thank you that you blessed my life on the earth. The wicked life that I had when I was lost and in sin. And that you took me from that and gave me that gift of salvation. And then gave me a book that I could read and that I could learn from and I could draw from. And I could gain freedom of heart, freedom of body, freedom in my heart for it. Listen to this. At first glance, it would seem let's look at it again. Unnecessary to discuss even the reason for studying God's Bible. You know why you would do it normally, but many people have said, why would I want to read the Bible? And I've had people tell me that. So I've never read it. Well, if you haven't read it, then you haven't been able to act on it. And if you haven't acted on it, there's a good possibility you're not even in God's will. And there's a good possibility you never got into the place to where you're going to really got saved and you're going to go to heaven. Many people have made this statement. Well, you know, people tell me, they say all the time, say, hey, Pete, I went forward one time in church and I asked the Lord to save me. Well, the question is did it make a difference? Are you different now? Are you still drinking beer? Still cussing? Still doing all the things the world does? Well, if you are, then you aren't saved. If you can do that, you don't have salvation. Salvation changes you. It makes you put away the things of the world. You cast them off. And you get to going and you follow what God would have. He wants clean people. He's not going to take a dirty man. I got news for you. If I told you all the things that weren't going to go into heaven, you would say, wow. And many of those things are things that we're still doing. That we still do as people. We do, and they're not going into heaven. Listen, nothing, nor anything of this world is entering heaven. Not the clothes I have on my back. Not the tattoo I have on my arm. Not that anything is going into heaven. It's not going there. What's going there is the soul and the spirit. The soul and the spirit of God that you have in you that belongs to God is going to go to heaven. The body is going to have to be shed. Jesus said when he says, come up hither, his eyes are as flaming fire. He said, and the graves were open, and those bodies that was in the graves come out and head toward heaven instantly. It's an instant thing. Do you think God has to wait for days and days and days for all the souls on this earth that went? No, he can do things instantly. He spoke into existence billions of stars, stars that mankind has never been able to even begin to count them. Mankind can't even fathom the distance of them. And God spoke them all in 1 second into existence. He spoke that sun up there into existence. He spoke that moon into existence. Do you think it took him time? No, time was made for man. Time was made for this particular earth. And that's what it's made for, this earth. God is not in time. He's so far advanced of time that he already knows everything that's going to happen on this earth. There's nothing surprises God. The Bible said there is nothing new under heaven to God. Nothing. He already knows for the end from the beginning. He already knows who's going to heaven and who isn't. He already knows who was going to ask him to save him and who wasn't. He already knows these things. You say, well, why did he allow me to live 30 years without being saved? Because he left it up to me. It's called volition. He gave me a volition to choose Him if I would. First, I had to see my degradation. I had to see where I was, and then I could choose Him. But I couldn't choose Him until I saw that. And that is the thing. The devil came into the world, and God allowed the devil to deceive Eve. And He allowed the devil to deceive Adam. And they were both deceived. And now we carry that same thing, that deception, that sin factor. And it was up to Adam and Eve, after God put those skins on, shed the blood of those two animals, those lambs, and put the skins on them, it was up to them to follow God after that. Yes, there was some punishment. The punishment that she would have childbearing, and it would be painful, and all of that. And yes, there would be thorns and thistles. Before the sin came in this world, there wasn't a thorn, there wasn't a thistle. There wasn't anything that would involve damaging a man or hurting a man. And all of a sudden, the animals even, the serpent wouldn't bite you. The elephant wouldn't stomp you. The lion wouldn't eat you. Before sin, when sin came, those animals that were carnivores, that were herbivores, became carnivores. And the serpent became where it was aggressive and it would bite you. All that stuff, it wasn't so in the beginning. So that's the way it got to be. At first glance, it would seem totally unnecessary to discuss the reason for studying God's Word. I mean, if you go to school and they lay a school book in front of you, a speller, and the first word on there is S-I-N-G, sing, it's up to you to study that and learn that S-I-N-G, sing. And you sing, if that's even spelt right. And so, and you learn that. And you learn the words that are in the book. Well, that's what this book is. It is our spelling book. It is our math book. It is everything in our life that we took in school is all, this book is all of it wrapped in one. Matter of fact, I have upstairs in my library a 1600 copy of a 1600 school book, and it was based on the Bible. All the math that's in the Bible was in that book. The English that was in the Bible is in that book. Everything that's in that book, the spelling is in this Bible. Everything in the 1600s was in this Bible. And that's what they taught from. I don't remember. I don't know if it was the McGuffey reader or what, but it was one of those readers. And it's all based on the Bible. That's why God blessed America, because people knew that the Bible was the answer, and people could quote it verbatim, cover to cover. By the way, an Israelite child, when he's 13, when I was in Jerusalem, I went to a bar mitzvah. A 13-year-old boy got up there and quoted and quoted and quoted and quoted and quoted and quoted. When he's 13, his bar mitzvah, that's to bring him into manhood. He has to quote, I don't know how much percentage, I forgot now, that he had to quote of the Bible. And he quoted it word for word. And he quoted the law. He quoted from Genesis all the way through Moses and Joshua and all the way up through. And it was really something. So let's look at this. God's Word, one might assume that in a conversation, a most natural thing for a new believer is to do what would be lifelong study of the book, which originally brought him to Christ. You would think that anybody would want to do a lifelong study of this book. The very God that brought him to salvation, that you would want to learn about that God, that you would want to study that God. A mechanic has a mechanic manual that he goes to. I've had a few of those in my day. When I was building Chevrolet engines, I had the mechanic book for Chevrolet engines. I knew everything from the first bolt on the top to the last bolt on the bottom. I knew how to mic the crank. I knew how to check the cylinders. I knew how to do all of that, set the valves. Knew how to get the spark right. Knew how to do things that I have forgotten now, all the things that I had to learn. But I had to learn them. And I could build a Chevrolet engine that would burn the tires. And that was fun when I was young. And then I got saved. Now I've got the book. It's called the Bible, that tells me how to live the Christian life. Should I not give as much attention to this book as I did to the manual so I could build an engine? So what am I doing now? I'm building souls for heaven. Building souls for heaven. Are you building souls for heaven? Would be a good question. Do you yourself get in the book enough so you can challenge somebody else to get in it? Have you set you up a yearly reading program? If you haven't, you need to. Listen to what he says. This is why I'm blessed. Because of its author, God, the author, Christ had brought Jesus, God brought Jesus Christ into the world so that we could have personal observation of what he wrote in his book. Here's a man, Jesus, in the flesh, walking on the earth, doing things that we could have this evidence before us. Now, back in the Old Testament, they had words. They saw the acts of God, but they never saw God. They saw things happen that were related to God, but they didn't see God. The only one that had a glimpse of God was Moses in the Old Testament. And that glimpse made him so bright, they had to put a sack over his head when he came down off the mountain because he was so bright they couldn't look at him. It was like a man walking down there with a star on him, in front of him. So, let's see what the truth of the Christians and the way about the Bible. If we're not in it, we won't know that. Often, God is taught as a creator and redeemer. And that's all people know about him. And sometimes they know him as a shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. Even lost people know that one. The 23rd Psalm. They know it in word, but do they know it in deed? Is the Lord really their shepherd? Does the Lord really lead them? How much Bible do they know? That's how much the shepherd can lead them. If they don't know any Bible, the shepherd can't lead them because they can't walk on the same path the shepherd's on. So you must know some Bible. Look at this. A judge. This is the correct thinking, of course. For he does indeed a function in all these roles. There is one great accomplishment of God which is almost always left off the divine attribute list compiled by men. That is the wonderful but forgotten rule of the author. God has written the book. God wrote the book. Yes, he used people to pen it down, but he's the one that gave the writing to them. Do you remember on the Isle of Patmos? Here's John. He'd been boiled in oil. He's put on an island by himself in a place. He undoubtedly had a scribe to pen some for him, to do some penning for him. He had been dipped in boiling oil. And he'd been thrown on that island, that prison. It was a prison. How they got food, I don't know. They had to scrap it up from somewhere. But here he is there, and he's writing the book. He's writing the book of Revelation. And God is revealing it from heaven to him. And he's penning it down. And so that you and I could have it. Is this a fellow that's in a good, comfortable place with a good writing light and all that? No. He's in probably one of the worst conditions a man could possibly be in. And he's writing what you and I have to live by and can live by and can follow. It's tragic but true. The fact that many Christians who will someday, along with believers, stand before the judgment seat of Christ and will be sadly forced to admit, while they were saved by heeding the salvation message of God's book, they nevertheless fail to ever read it. They heard somebody preach it. Their heart was touched. And they asked the Lord to save them. And they've never opened a Bible. I've been a paint contractor for, 60 years. I've painted in hundreds of houses. And on the top shelf in the closet would be Grandma's Bible. And they said, be careful now, that's Grandma's Bible up there. And we get it down and say, wow, this is a pretty Bible. And they say, yeah, Grandma used it all the time. Well, have you used it? No, we wouldn't dare open it up, open the pages of it. That's Grandma's. Well, I got news for you. Grandma's in heaven praying that you would open the pages. Praying that you would get it out. Praying that you would get what she had. If you get what she had, you're going to get it out of this book. And that's where you're going to get it. You ain't going to get it nowhere else other than this book. The message, that's what this book is. It is the message of God to us human beings. That if we want to do what God wants us to do, we must read His book. We should be careful to read it. We should be careful to proclaim it day by day, week by week, hour by hour, minute by minute. Ever since I've been saved, I got the Bible on tape. And I had tape recorders in my car. And I played them. I got this little thing right here. This is $40. My boy gave it to me at Dollar General. And this is a reading.
This I say, that the covenant
this is
that
a
was
reading
confirmed before
of God's
God
Word
in Christ, the law, which was 430 years after,
I'm still
cannot disannul,
day
but it should
and
make
night.
the promise of none effect.
When I'm laying in bed at night, this
For
is
if
by
the
my
inheritance
head,
be
right
of
there.
the law,
Reading
it is
in
no
my
more
ear.
of promise.
I'm hearing it every
God
night.
gave it to Abraham.
Somebody would say, Peter, doesn't that get old? No. The Bible's brand new every time you read it. You see something you didn't see before. Read something, find something in the Bible, and read it for 10 days straight. Write down the first day what you saw. Write down the second day what you saw, and don't look at what you wrote down the first day. Write down the third day what you saw, and don't look at the others. And do that for 10 days, and at the end of it, read what you wrote. You're going to find out that that little sentence that you read, that little paragraph of that little book, you're going to find out in 10 days you learn 10 different things. If you read it 20 days, you'll have 20 different things. You say, Brother Peter, what if you read it 100 days? If you read it 100 days, you might know what it said. You just might know what it said if you read it 100 times. This is an infinite book. It was written in infinity. It was written before we ever saw it. God had it in His repertoire. And He put it down on paper for you and I. It tells us all about the beginning. It tells us all about in the middle. It tells us all about a group of people that He dealt with. It tells us about all of the Gentiles. It tells us about all the animals. It tells us about the sky, the stars, the sun, the moon, the air, the rain, the wind. It tells us everything. If you want to know anything in this world today, you can go to this book, the Bible, and find out everything. Because of the often repeated command to read it, this book of the law should not depart out of your mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein, for then thou shalt make thy way prosperous. Listen to that. Why did I read this verse, Joshua 1 and 8? because God said he would make your way prosperous. Do you know who Joshua was? He's the one that marched around Jericho and blew the trumpets, and Jericho fell down. And the children of Israel won it. And he didn't fire a shot. He didn't lose a man. He didn't lose a child. He didn't lose anybody. He did what God said to do. And he stayed in the book, and he followed what God said to do. And when God said march around it 7 times, he didn't say, what? March around it? I ain't going to do that. That's foolish. I ain't going to do that. No, he didn't say that. He said, how many times, God? God said, once a day, every day, for 6 days. And on the 7th day, march around it 7 times. And it's late in the evening now. You have those priests step forward and blow the trumpets. And you all shout. And the picture is of shouting and stomping their feet. And shouting and the horns blowing. And the walls fell down. I said this in another excerpt a while back. And in that other excerpt, I said, do you know, there was a lady in that town. Her name was Rahab. She had put those spies up. And God said, because you've done that, Rahab, I will promise you that your house will not fall. Do you know her house was on that wall? I got a chance to go over there in 74, and I saw that place on that wall where that house had stood. The high point in that wall. All the rest was fall down but her house. You say, it's an amazing thing for God to knock the wall down. Yes, it was. But it was more amazing that he left that one spot that he promised he would. All of God's promises are yea and yea. His promises are all yea and yea. The only one they're nay to is those that are disobedient. Had Joshua said, God, I'm not going to do that. That's foolish. I'm not going to do that. The children of Israel would have been killed right where they were. And that would have been the end of it because of the disobedience of one man. When God speaks to you, you better be obedient. Is it always easy? No. Paul said, you know, sometimes it's hard, or Peter said, to kick against the pricks. Do you know in that day they had an ox goad? It was about 16 feet long. And they carried it with them everywhere they went. And the oxen was in front of them. And they'd take that thing and they'd prick that ox. Has the left side. He's slacking back a little bit. They'd prick him with that and he'd jump up there and go. He didn't want to be pricked with that goad. So the left side gets that way a little bit. They go over there and prick that left side a little bit. And he gets up there. Pretty soon they're marching on in together. And that's how they kept on. A team of them working together. I don't like being pricked either. I don't like God to have to say to me, hey, that was wrong. Hey, you need to straighten that out. Hey, that wasn't right. I don't like that either. I don't like being goaded either. and that's what Paul was saying to them. You won't be goaded if you go ahead and do what you're supposed to. Study to show thyself approved to God, a workman needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. 2 Timothy 2:15. Are you rightly dividing the word of God? Do you have a plan where you are studying something in the Bible every day? Are you rightly dividing the word of God? All of these things were not just written for those people of that day. They were written for you and I. They were given to us. We didn't have to suffer. We didn't do the suffering these people did to write this. The men that wrote this suffered. But he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Matthew 4:4. You know in Matthew 4:4, God is saying to us that we need every word out of this Bible. We need to have glanced at least one time. Have you read through? Yes, I've read through. Have you read through more than once? I've studied through, but not just read all the way through. I've studied through. I had to get my degree. I got my degree for studying truth. And that's how you get your degree. You study. If you study, show yourself approved, a workman need not to be ashamed. That's where you need to be. But he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. If it's written for that you do that, then you need to do it. I need to do it. Everybody needs to do it. There isn't anybody that doesn't need to do it that's a Christian. Especially to be noted is this last verse. Jesus said, every word. Be every word. Did you hear what he said? Every word. I have a book that tells me how many words there is in the Bible. I have a book that tells me how many words there is in every chapter. I have a book that tells me how many words there is in every verse. I have some books that tell me things about the Bible. So I could go and do statistics all day long. But statistics is not what saves you. It's what the words say, not the statistics of how many there is. It's what they say. And that's what's important. Sinners are saved through the message of the Bible. I got saved through the message of the Bible. He said, if you will ask me to forgive you your sin, come in your heart and save your soul, I will. I'll come in and save you, and I will deliver you from where you are. There wasn't a human being on this earth that needed delivering more from where they were than I did. I could have been dead 20 times. I defied death. I defied God. I defied everything. I cursed God. I defied men 3 times bigger than me. I defied the devil. I defied everything. And God allowed me to live. And now I'm 76. God's gave me good health. I can still work every day. I can stay out and do what I need to do in the Lord. Where'd that prosperity come from? I told you right up here. God said, you follow me and I will give you good success. That's it. And whosoever call upon my name, the Lord shall be, or the name of the Lord shall be saved. How then shall they call on him whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe on him whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? Wow. Every person that's saved needs to become a preacher of the gospel. The preacher of peace. And the glad tidings of good things. But not have all obeyed the gospel. For Isaiah saith, Lord, who hath believed our report? So then faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So Isaiah said, those people ain't reading your word, God. Those people ain't listening. And God said they won't be saved either. They'll die and go to hell. I put my book in front of them. I put my word in front of them. I sent a preacher to them and they killed him. And there's a place in the Bible where he sent several preachers and they killed all of them. And they killed the priests. And they didn't like people telling them that they were sinners. They didn't like people telling them they were going to die and go to hell. And so they killed them. That didn't change the word one bit. It made a martyr for that person has a special place in heaven. Everybody that's killed for the word has a special place in heaven. They're going to be brighter stars than the average person. You say, Brother Peter, you think men become stars when they go to heaven? I think that we see a relationship to the brightness of that person when they get in heaven, and I think the terminology of stars fits pretty good. I go out at night and stand in my parking lot, and I look up, and I see stars very bright, and I see little bitty stars. I see stars that twinkle, and stars that don't. Just think, if everybody that left this earth became one of those stars, and the Bible said the stars are innumerable, nobody knows the number but God. Wouldn't that be something? That's not written in the Bible that we will become stars. But Peter, standing up with the 11, lifted up his voice and said unto them, Ye men of Judea, and all ye that dwell in Jerusalem, be it known this day unto you. Notice he's saying, this day unto you. Hearken unto my words. Now when they heard this, they were pricked in their hearts, and said unto Peter, and the rest of the apostles, men and brethren, what shall we do? Acts 2:37. Therefore, they that are scattered abroad went everywhere, preaching the word. Then Philip went down to the city of Samaria, and preached Christ unto them. Let me tell you a little story. Samaritans were half-breed Jews. And nobody, especially Philip or Peter or them others, would go down there and preach. But these are the first guys saved and preaching. God said, don't call anybody. Go on down there to Samaria. They need me too. And they probably needed him as bad, if not worse, than some others. And they went down there. Just like Jesus went to Samaria. He sat on the well at Sychar. And the woman came out, the Samaritan woman. And he told her everything. He said, you've had 5 husbands. And the man you're living with now ain't your husband. She said, how could you know this if you weren't the one that's sent from God? That great one, the prophet, Jesus. He said, I am he. Wow. And she knew all about him. And here she was a Samaritan. She had studied this. She knew about him. She had probably been raised as a Jewish girl and young and knew all about Jesus, but didn't follow it until she actually saw him, and then she knew the scriptures already. She had read the Bible. She knew the Bible. She went out and brought the whole city back, and the whole city got saved. How about that? And the disciples were indignant because Jesus went down there. They said, man, you went down to the Samaritans? Why would you do that? And he said, they're humans just like you, and they need the gospel too. And that is our duty, to take it to everybody in the world. Our time's come and gone. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.